Hi everyone, it's great to be together to talk about what's new in minerals today. Obviously a bit of a different format from our usual one, broadcasting to you from the forest outside Bancroft, Ontario. But I will be covering things I usually cover. As John mentioned, I generally report on new finds from Canada when there are some to report, and I'm happy to say that Canada has a good showing in my report this year, and I also have a few really nice international things to talk about as well. So with that, let's get started, and we'll start with Canada, working from east to west. Starting in eastern Newfoundland, at Lamanche on the Avalon Peninsula, we are going to start with what was unquestionably the largest specimen excavation project in Canada this past year. This excavation, the locality's actually been known for a little while, and our friend Brad Wilson was out collecting at this locality 2 or 3 years ago, collected some beautiful intensely colored amethyst, cut beautiful gems from it as well. And this year, the Tyson's Fine Minerals entered into an agreement with the landowner and did the major work that was required to expose this deposit. And you can see in the photograph here that this is no small working. The Rod Tyson is on the left of the photograph for scale, and there was a lot to be done to excavate. But what they found was wonderful material, and there's some beautiful amethyst. And here's one of the nicest specimens from the find. Beautiful cluster, 8 centimeters across. You can see deep purple Uruguay type color in the terminations of these crystals, and you can see as well, you can get a sense of the fact that the luster is brilliant on these crystals. Very bright glassy luster. Really beautiful material. This is one of the gems that Brad cut, a gorgeous purple color and just under a centimeter across. Again, really beautiful material. Here's another beautiful specimen, 6.3 centimeters across. That largest crystal there is about 4 centimeters. And again, you can see the beautiful deep purple color in the tips and bright luster. For those of you who were in Tucson, you might have seen there was a very nice display of Lamanche amethyst at Jewel Tunnel, and I'm happy to be able to report, I'm sure many of you are wondering what the future might hold for Lamanche. I'm happy to be able to report that although I think a lot of what was done in 2019 might be characterized as exploratory work to think about the future, the Tysons have decided to go back to Lamanche, and their team will be back there when it is possible to do again in these strange times. So I'm happy to be able to say I think there's more interesting material and more beautiful amethysts yet to come from Lamanche. So we'll keep our eyes open for that. I'm going to move west to Nova Scotia. But I'm unfortunately not going to be able to show you a picture of my first item, still staying with Tyson's Fine Minerals. I can't show you a picture because the photographer's car broke down, true story. Near Halls Harbor, there's been a find of very nice Hewlandite crystals. These they're blocky, they're well formed, lustrous and sharp, to quite decent sizes for the mineral, several centimeters. So although we tend to think of Hewlandite from the Bay of Fundy as fairly small, these are very sizable and really nice crystals for the species. And I believe that project will be an ongoing project as well. So I'm sure we'll have photographs in next year's program of the Hewlandites from near Halls Harbor. Another very nice find from the Bay of Fundy. This is out at 5 Islands. Terry Collett, Ronnie Van Dommelen, and I collected this material. These are combinations of Analcime and Stilbite, the Stilbite forming in wheat sheaves and fans, and the Analcime crystals dotting the tops of the Stilbites. You can see that the color of the stilbite in this particular specimen is a medium color, very, very nice golden color for the stilbite on the Bay of Fundy. This one here is 8.5 centimeters across. This material really varied, so we went from things that really had only stilbite to specimens that were entirely covered with analcime, so thick that you could not see any stilbite. But in between there are beautiful combination specimens, and I thought I'd share a couple of those. This specimen is a beautiful fan, the largest fan from the find at 5.4 centimeters with a few small translucent analcime crystals across the top. And this is the darker color from the find as well. Here are just a few more specimens from this find. It was a good sized find. There were quite a few specimens, and the top two on this slide are approximately 4.5 centimeters across, and the bottom two on the slide are just a hair under 3 centimeters. This was a fun find to collect. We had a good time doing it until it ended very abruptly. Everything seemed to be going great, and we thought we were heading into a great zone, and then it was truly done. To quote the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey player Tiger Williams, he once said, "Dem penguins is done like dinner." And that's what I would say about this particular spot. But it was a great time. Another find from the Bay of Fundy, if you look at the size, this is a remarkable specimen. This specimen was found by Terry Collett and Ronnie Van Dommelen in April 2019 out at Cap d'Or. And it is, you can see it's a vug containing large apophyllite crystals with beautiful color zoning to a nice green. The crystals are sharp, they are very lustrous. The crystals in this vug are pristine quality. This is a major find for certainly for a Canadian apophyllite. It's a major apophyllite, and really for almost any world locality, this is pretty special for fluoropophyllite. So it's a pleasure to be able to share it with you. Moving west to Quebec, and a locality that is near and dear to the hearts of many of us at Rochester, our beloved Mont Saint-Hilaire, one of the world's great mineral localities. I think most people here know that for a period of about 10 years, Mont Saint-Hilaire was completely off limits to any collecting whatsoever. There was no specimen preservation, and any mineral specimens went through the crusher at that time. Very fortunately, things have changed in the last 2 or 3 years. There is a better relationship and a new approach at the quarry. Access is still very strictly controlled and very limited, so there isn't that much access. But during this period, the last couple of years, there have been some nice finds, and one of those finds was a find of Natrolite. The Natrolites from this find, it was a pocket that contained sprays of radiating crystals, and the Natrolites from this find are sharp. They have very lustrous, glassy, pyramidal terminations. In general, the crystals are a little bit flattened in aspect rather than a purely square cross-section. And most of them were actually clusters that had very little or no matrix. This one has a little bit of matrix with it. And in addition to that, they also have a little secret to them. Under shortwave ultraviolet light, they look pretty spectacular. They have a wonderful green to them. They are very bright and gorgeous to look at. Not all Natrolite fluoresces, some does, some doesn't. Certainly some other finds from Mont Saint-Hilaire have exhibited this same fluorescence. You can see in this picture there's some reddish pink in the matrix. That's the microcline, and in the matrix, and there's some purple reflections off of the adrian, but really beautiful material. Here's another beautiful Natrolite. Quite a few of these clusters seem to have no real point of attachment, and again, they have sharp pyramidal terminations and well formed. They're beautiful specimens. And again, under shortwave ultraviolet, they're intense green. You can see in this one that there's a little bit of extra brightness close to the tips, and the very tips are not quite as bright. So there is some zoning going on in these crystals, and you can see that very clearly under the ultraviolet. Moving west again to Ontario, and pretty close to home. This is in the Grenville geological province. There are many Grenville fans at Rochester. Of course, I am one of them. And this find was very interesting. We don't often have lots new to report from the Canadian Grenville, but this find is worth talking about for a minute. These are black amphibole crystals. Of course, black amphibole itself is also nothing new from the Grenville. But these fluoro-richterite crystals are special, and this find was special. This was a fairly small find in terms of number of specimens, but what's special about it is the habit that you're looking at with these crystals. If you're looking at it, these are mostly termination faces. These are very short, flattened, almost discoidal crystals. When we were collecting them, I called them the UFO fluoro-richterites. They are, if you look, for example, at the top crystal, you can see it's basically standing on edge. So it's at 90 degrees, where the faces on the left and the right are the termination faces, and just those three faces up the middle are the entire length of the prism. So this is a very unusual crystal habit for amphiboles of any kind in the Grenville. We have seen it before. This is not entirely novel. There were black amphibole fluoro-richterite crystals from the old Hunter property, which is also in the Tory Hill group of vein dikes many years ago. And but nonetheless, this find was interesting and worth sharing. The crystals are sharp, they are very lustrous, and very nice pieces. And moving west, one final entry for Canada. Philippe Belly has found a couple of interesting localities for gem material, and thought I'd share those with you. Some beautiful Forsterite. That crystal there is 2.5 centimeters from near Arrowhead, and the other British Columbia entry are these deep blue Iolite Cordierite specimens. That rough is 1.6 centimeters. Michael Bainbridge photographs, really nice material and interesting. It'll be interesting to see what comes from there. So that's a wrap on the Canadian portion, and we'll move on to a few international things. First up is the new find of spectacular bornonite from the Vibors mine in Potosi in Bolivia. This find was really something. Now, the Vibors mine is a locality that over the years and decades has sporadically produced bornonite finds. This is not an isolated occurrence. However, they are, first of all, not common. They're not coming out all the time. And second, most of the specimens that are recovered from this locality are they're not as sharp, they're not as lustrous. Every once in a while, a couple of times there have been really nice finds. A few years ago there was a find of very sharp, bright ones. That was a fairly limited quantity of specimens, and now there's been a new find last year of really, these are spectacular pieces. So they're sharp, they're lustrous, they exhibit the classic cogwheel twinning that we think of when we think of textbook bornonite, when we think of the classic material from the Herod's Foot mine in Cornwall that came out in the 19th century. This is wonderful material, and you know, the find was not small. There were many specimens that I saw, but you know, bornonite is a soft mineral, and it's a brittle mineral, and I think care has been taken in the collecting and prep of many of these pieces. But even so, you know, it was the key was to seek out the high quality pieces, and there were a few wonderful quality pieces of various sizes and calibers. So thought I'd share from this find. Really nice. This one is 5.2 centimeters, obviously, and it's now in the collection of Mark Foster. I love this piece. This is a beautiful little piece with gorgeous Bornonite cogwheel twins, and not a huge one, 4.2 centimeters, but just as good as this mineral gets, in my opinion. Really, really nice. This specimen is now in the collection of Jean Yarmio. I couldn't resist a close-up. Sorry, it's just too cool. It's wonderful stuff. If you like twins and you like crystals, it's hard not to think about. I mean, that's a dream looking at that for me. So love it. We've seen Prehnite from Morocco, from different localities in Morocco over the years. Several of the things, I think we most often see it attributed to Imilchil. You know, attributing a specimen to Imilchil in Morocco is a bit like attributing it to Bancroft. It may be the town or settlement that is in the middle of a large area that produces minerals, but you know, it's a pretty inexact place. This is actually not from there. This is from further to the east and north in Morocco. Specimens have been found at Taza before, but this new material seems to be from a new find. These specimens are quite special. The Prehnites are sharp. They're lustrous. The groups of Prehnites often, it's very easy to distinguish individual crystals in the group, and they're really wonderful examples for the species. So this new find from Taza is really nice, and I thought I should share. The specimen obviously 8.6 centimeters. This specimen does a great job of exhibiting the two habits of this Prehnite from the new find. On the left, you see the hemisphere. I've certainly seen broken specimens, and they are, of course, radiating crystals from a central point to form these balls. And on the right-hand side of the specimen, you can see there are flatter fans standing up, and they are quite flat in aspect, and really, really nice specimen there too at 9.1 centimeters. From Pakistan, we've been seeing Epidote for a number of years from Balochistan, and what seems remarkable to me is just how many different habits. Every new find seems to exhibit a new habit and offer, you know, a different exciting take on Epidote. We've seen things from those big blocky crystals years ago that included small amounts of magnetite. We've seen the little bow ties. I think they were featured last year in What's New. And this year there were fans on quartz, and these fans of crystals have beautiful lustrous terminations. They are sharp and clean, and really they're dark. They're very dark. They show a little bit more green here, but they're very dark and a beautiful contrast with the quartz in person. They're very, very nice specimens. Now, unfortunately, this is a common complaint from me, but you know, I did go through the lot from this find, and you know, I mean, I probably went through a couple hundred specimens, and it was tough going to pull out 10 that were nice. They had not been treated very well, and most of them were damaged, but the ones that are good are super. This little specimen is very cute. Very nice little fan on quartz from the same from Quran, 3.6 centimeters. Very sweet. John spoke about the Rock Courier collection, so I'm not going to go into it too much more. You know, it's been quite a thing over the last year. Rock really did put together a remarkable collection, and I just thought I'd share this one piece. This is Not new, of course. This specimen came out of the famous pocket, which was 1990 at Chimène, or the mine is called Yupayu, and it's the specimens from that pocket are best of species, and that's an 8.3 centimeter crystal. It's too bad it has to be kept in the dark and can't be out more often, but still an absolutely remarkable specimen for the species. This last slide of mine is something that is not new, but it's a little story about something new that I learned about it that I felt would be helpful to share. This is alabandite from Merrilani in Tanzania. This is from the killer find in December 2012, January 2013, when the world's great alabandites from Merrilani came out. And the story really relates to the care of alabandite. I have to be honest, I had never given the care of alabandite concentrated additional thought. And I received an email from a friend who asked me, is alabandite light sensitive? I clicked reply and I started to tap out a reply, nope, and I thought, I really don't know that, do I? And so I started to dig in my books. There's a lot of reference material around here, so I started to dig into that and see what I could come up with. I sent emails out to a couple of expert friends, one expert on Merrilani and the sulfides from Merrilani, and one expert on sulfide minerals in general. Neither one of them was aware of any light sensitivity. And I don't really think any of us had given this a lot of concentrated thought. So in my search for through the reference material, I found almost nothing until I came across a mention in the great little book by John Sinkankas, Gemstone and Mineral Data Book. 2 words, light sensitive. Now, he also mentions moisture sensitivity and the tendency of alabandite to oxidize upon exposure to moisture. So that's another thing I had not given a lot of thought to. And we'll come back to that. But so the Sinkankas reference was the only one I found, and John Jasak found a mention in Pearl also about light sensitive, but nothing more. So we didn't have any quantification or any more information than that to go on, but a curious reference. I also really like the book that's called The Care and Conservation of Geological Material by Frank Howey. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but a great little reference, and it also did not mention light sensitivity. It does mention the moisture sensitivity and potential for oxidation when exposed to moisture. So with that, I then examined this specimen in the photograph here. This specimen has been in my display case in the room where my collection resides. That room is not lit. It's usually a dark room. When the display case lights are on, obviously it is well lit. But I'm not there all the time, and when I'm not in that room, there are no lights on, so it's not really exposed to a ton of light. And when I took that out of the case and had a close look, there is no question that the upper face, the triangular face facing you in the photograph, was slightly tarnished. The 2 sides were also slightly tarnished, and the faces that were pointing down in the photograph were not tarnished at all. Now, it was a very slight tarnish, but it was unmistakable. They were all equal originally when I acquired the specimen. So something had happened to that specimen in that setting, and that's rather interesting. That room is humidity controlled, it's air conditioned, so there shouldn't really be any susceptibility to moisture that would be evident in specimens in that room, and similarly it's not exposed to a lot of light at all, as I've described. So quite curious, but I think something to note, especially we're at Rochester, we are collectors and we are curators. Of course there are people in all sorts of roles who attend Rochester, but we're all charged with the responsibility of caring for these specimens, and this was a surprising discovery to me that alabandite is not as stable as I might have assumed. One additional note, I did decide to take a paper towel and dampen it, and of course I started at the back of the specimen where any result would not be visible while the specimen was displayed, and I rubbed on it a little bit gently, and the very light tarnish did come off, and I was able to restore visually anyway. I have no way of measuring. I was able to visually restore the luster. So it may be possible. I don't know that that's true. I don't know if because I don't know the cause. I don't know whether that would be equal if it was a light reaction versus a moisture reaction. Of course, if you do it on the back of a specimen to try. But just a note about how we should look after and love our alabandites going forward. And that's my last. Thank you very much to everybody who helped me to put this together. Obviously, Michael Bainbridge contributes great photographs. Terry Collett, Ronnie Van Domelen also helped. So thanks so much, and thank all of you. And with that, we're over to Mark.